Hello and welcome to Awaken, a space where truth is not only allowed, it is honored. My name is Zainab Hamid, and I created this podcast for the parts of us that have spent too long questioning ourselves, shrinking, or waiting for permission to be who we already are. Here, we talk about healing, not as a destination, but as a relationship with yourself. We talk about emotional regulation, boundaries, self trust, and the quiet strength it takes to choose clarity over chaos. This is not a space for perfection. This is a space for presence, for honesty, for becoming emotionally capable of holding the life you desire. If you're here, it's not by accident. Something in you is already awakened to your truth, your worth, and your voice. So take a deep breath, settle in, and let's begin. Today's episode is something I always talk about. It's something extremely important, really. And I really grew into knowing and realizing and discovering that we created ourselves, that we should never seek it from outside sources. And it's clarity, true love is clear, and true anything with truth in it is comes clear, comes blunt, comes from a place of true admiration and true love and true compassion and true alignment. And so I this episode is clarity versus confusion. And this episode is so important, especially when it comes to the dating scene and the relationship scene. There should never ever be a point in time when you are in a relationship, or you are getting to know somebody, or you're thinking about being in a relationship, where even for a second you're confused. First of all, if a man wants a woman, he is never going to keep her confused. You want to know why? I'm going to tell you why. And this is something so important. If a man can handle you walking outside confused about where you guys are standing, and you can actually tell people you're single and all of these things, he doesn't want you for a relationship. He wants you for something else. And that's my truth. That's how I understand things. I just see, like, and I'm talking in general, I'm not talking about me, okay? So it's very, very, very important to understand, like, when you understand how people move when they actually want something, you could never really, you just don't want anything else than the straightforward truth, like the straightforward honesty. And there's no confusion in love. There's no confusion in relationships. There's no games. There's no when a man wants you, or when a woman wants you, she's going to make it obvious. At least the woman's going to make it obvious, but the man is going to make sure there's clarity there. That's his job. I'm just saying. That's the way, like, it's not anybody's job. It's just, it should be the initiator should hold that, should hold the masculine role, you know? And so when it comes to relationships, confusion should never be in there, because that's when chaos enters, and that's when the games start, and that's when the narcissistic abuse and all of these things, all these terms that we use nowadays, becomes relevant within the relationship, because there's no clarity. And if you want a healthy relationship, the number one thing that you should seek is clarity, is truth. Because if there's no truth and honesty, what's the point? What's really the point? What's really the what is the intention if there's no clarity? Would you even know? No, you don't know anything. So what's the point? Why would you put yourself in a place where you're not being held with softness and you're not being held at all, really? Like there's no support whatsoever if there's no clarity. There's no relationship. And that's really probably, if not the most important thing within a relationship, is the clarity, is respect. Clarity is respect. If there's no clarity, there's no respect. It's not respectful at all, right? And so I say that with discovery. For even myself, I discovered that, and I was like, I will never be in I will never put myself in a friendship. I will never put myself in a work relationship. I will never put myself in a romantic relationship if there's no clarity, if there's no straightforward communication. And if there's something wrong, I have no problem expressing that anymore. And that's when you come into a place, when you are in that peaceful state. You are in that state of you're going to hold on to that peace with your entire grip. Like, you're not going to allow confusion into your life. You're going to place very, 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 very strong, meaningful, healthy boundaries. And if they're not respected, then that person doesn't respect you. And that's the way I see it. It's really, really that simple. Relationships are not hard. They're really not. If there's truth in them, if there's clarity in them, if there's kindness and gentleness in them. It's not about who's controlling who and who's this and who's doing that and who's doing that. No, nobody wants to control anybody. Everybody just wants to be respected, and respected in a way fully 100%, without confusion and without games and without, like me personally, if I sense even a little bit of games, I'm pulling all the way back. And it's just like that, because then you're disturbing my peace. And I'm talking in general. That's the way it should be for man and woman. It's so important. It's so important to protect you, to protect yourself in that kind of way. To protect yourself in a way that's really aligned with who you are as a person, aligned with your morals and values. That's what we build our boundaries around. And and that's the most important thing, is to stick to those, because there's a reason you have them. So with this episode, it's really just a very simple. If there's no clarity in anything, whether that's work, friendship, family, whatever it is, if there's no clarity in it and there's confusion, then it's toxic. What's the point? Right? Now, some people might, when you say you have these strong boundaries and you stick to them. Some people might say you're too much, or you expect too much, or you put too much pressure on someone, or your standards are not something you will ever find, or whatever the case. And I've heard them all. And for me, I always say this to myself: I'd rather be alone than in bad company. And that's a standard I have for myself. That's a boundary I have for myself, because I have self boundaries too. I don't just have boundaries for the outside world. I have boundaries for myself. It's called discipline. It's called, I'm not going to entertain anyone that brings chaos into my life, right? Even if it's a job, if it's, even if it's whatever, whatever it is, anything that brings chaos and confusion and uncertainty and all these things should never be a part of, even if you're bringing that within yourself. Like, if you should put that in check right away, because we do that to ourselves too. I'm talking about me too. Like, I've done that to myself so many times, where I know something is wrong for me, and I know that something doesn't make sense, and all of that stuff, but I still try and try to understand it, and try to this and try that, and I always end up hurting myself. Always, 100% of the time, end up hurting myself. So you live and you learn. You live and you learn. This is why, like, I started this podcast, because I just feel like there's so much things that we don't talk about. There's so many things, even that um I went through, and I could shed light on it for someone else. And if I could do that for one person, that would mean the entire world to me. So so that's why I started this podcast. I started this podcast for women like me, and for us to have a place where we can talk about what we went through without judgment, and without um and without and just being free in the moment, and being free within ourselves to actually say the things that are on our minds, what we actually want, without being afraid of being too much. And I think I've attracted a lot of people that that said I was too much. And you know for some time I really reflected on that. I'm like, is it too much? Am I too much? Am I really? And I came to the conclusion that I'm really not, though. I'm really not, because the most simplest things, I'm a very simple woman. I'm a very, very simplistic simple woman. I am pleased with the most simplest things, and the most kindest gestures. And even my kids, the way I raise them is very simple and beautiful, and they have a beautiful life, and I have a beautiful life, because we find joy in that simplicity of life. We find joy in the company, in the presence that we give each other, in the moments that you can never take back, in the memories that you share. And in those memories that we share, it's usually just being in somebody's presence. And if presence is being is non-existent, and you know, it it just doesn't make sense. I think a lot of people would be confused. I'm it, it it's just being having that clarity and that presence and asking for those things is not too much. It's basic human decency, really, if you think about it. And even if it was too much, if it's too much for someone to handle, then that person is not for you, right? Because, like I said before, I say this almost every single episode. Almost every single episode. If a man wants you, there's nothing that he wouldn't do. Just saying. Now, if a woman's not going to put him in those kind of places, but if she's talking in general here, in general, if she is asking for the basics and it's not being met, I don't know. I don't. How could you even say that she's too much, right? How could, and that's many times people use that term to make a woman feel afraid to ask for what she wants, right? Or make a woman feel like, okay, I have to shrink myself in this moment. I have to bend to somebody else's will. When in actuality, no, I'm not. It's that simple. And no, I'm not. You know, it's just really that simple. And it's not out of ego or anything. It's like, okay, I'm not asking for the moon and the stars. I'm asking for basic human decency and basic things that any woman would feel like you can't even, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's not too much at all. And I'm not talking about me, I'm talking about in general. I'm just talking about how, if a woman is strong enough within herself, she becomes too much for the world and she becomes too much for certain people. And that's okay. And if you're that woman that heard, oh, she's too much, or you heard those kind of expressions from the outside world, so what? Hold it like a champ. Hold that to yourself, and be happy with it. So what? We're too much, you know. We are in some. We are not. We are not. We're never too much. Actually, that's what I meant to say. We're never too much for the right people, and I think the best part about holding yourself in that kind of way is being able to be the empress in your own life, to call in the right people in your own life and to hold them when they do arrive, and you're met at the same level that you are in, you know. And so when something is unclear, inconsistent, or emotionally unavailable, your body feels it before your mind can ever explain it. And instead of listening to that signal, many of us are taught to override it. We tell ourselves we're overthinking. We tell ourselves to be patient. We tell ourselves to ask, not to ask for too much. But what if that discomfort isn't insecurity at all? What if it's information? Love is not a puzzle you're meant to solve. It's not something you're meant to decode. And if clarity has to be forced, it's already absent. For a long time, I thought I needed more proof, more words, more explanations, more reassurance, and more promises. But what I realized is that proof doesn't calm the nervous system. Presence does. Presence looks like consistency. It looks like emotional availability. It looks like follow through without pressure. I stopped asking for proof when I realized presence answers everything. Someone can explain themselves endlessly and still not be present with you. And someone can say very little and make you feel completely safe. You don't need more evidence. You need alignment. Love should come from an open door, not pressure. Boundaries are not walls, they are clarity. And when someone expresses your standards as pressure, that tells you something important. The right people don't feel controlled by your boundaries, they feel safe within them. Knowing what you need is not demanding, it's self respect. And asking for emotional availability is not asking for too much, it's asking for connection. One of the hardest lessons in healing is learning to choose what is what it is over what it could be. Potential can keep us stuck. Hope can keep us waiting. But peace lives in the present. At some point, I stopped chasing clarity and started choosing it. I stopped trying to convince myself into situations that required me to abandon my intuition. And I chose myself, not out of bitterness, but out of trust. So I want to leave you with this question. Where in your life are you accepting confusion in a place that requires clarity? And what would change if you honored what your body already knows? You don't need more proof. You need presence. Now, if this episode resonated with you and you're ready for a space where clarity, emotional safety, and self trust are built, you can book a safe seat with me. I help women calm the storm within so they can rise again. The link is in my bio. Thank you for being here, and I'll see you in the next episode.